The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Tony's auto repair as Marcus Chen wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal filled the air, a smell that had become as natural to him as breathing over the past 3 years. He glanced at the clock mounted above the tool bench, noting it was barely 7:30, but he had already been working for an hour. The bell above the front door chimed, its metallic ring echoing through the cluttered garage. Marcus looked up to see an elderly woman carefully maneuvering through the doorway, her weathered hands gripping the handles of a wheelchair. In the chair sat a young girl with bright brown eyes and pigtails that bounced as they moved over the uneven threshold. "Good morning," Marcus called out, setting down his wrench and walking toward them. His voice carried the gentle warmth that had become his trademark with customers, especially the older ones who reminded him of his own grandmother. "How can we help you today?" The woman, who appeared to be in her 70s, smiled with relief at his welcoming tone. "I'm Maria Rodriguez, and this is my granddaughter Emma. Our Honda has been making the most terrible grinding noise when we brake. I'm worried it might not be safe to drive." Marcus knelt down to Emma's eye level, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Hi there, Emma. That's a pretty name. How old are you?" 7, Emma replied, her voice soft but confident. She pointed toward the large garage doors that faced the street. "Are those your cars you're fixing?" "Some of them," Marcus nodded. "I help make cars work better so families can drive safely. Just like we're going to do with your grandmother's car." Through the open garage doors, the sound of children's laughter drifted in from the small park across the street. Emma's head turned toward the noise, and Marcus noticed how her eyes followed a group of kids racing by on bicycles, their wheels spinning freely as they pedaled with abandon. For just a moment, something wistful crossed her young features. Tony Marcelli emerged from the small office in the back corner of the garage, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence before his gravelly voice did. "What's the problem with the Honda?" he asked without preamble, barely glancing at Maria and Emma as he wiped grease from his thick fingers. "Brake issues," Marcus replied, already moving toward the vehicle. "Mrs. Rodriguez, if you could show me where you parked, I'll take a look right away." As they walked outside, Emma's wheelchair moved smoothly over the concrete, but Marcus noticed how she had to navigate carefully around the various obstacles. Her grandmother pushed with practiced ease, clearly accustomed to finding the smoothest path through any environment. The Honda Civic was older, probably 15 years, but well maintained. Marcus popped the hood and began his inspection, his trained eye immediately spotting several issues that went beyond the brake problem. These weren't just normal wear items, they were safety concerns that needed immediate attention. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said gently, stepping away from the engine bay, "the brake pads are completely worn down, and I'm seeing some other issues that we should address. The total repair is going to run about $800. Maria's face fell, and she glanced down at Emma with obvious concern. "That's more than I expected," she admitted quietly. "Is it safe to drive until next week? I don't get my social security check until then." Marcus felt the familiar tug in his chest that came whenever he encountered families struggling with necessary repairs. He had been in similar situations himself, especially in the months immediately after his wife Sarah's death when medical bills had consumed most of their savings. "I tell you what," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Let me talk to Tony about a payment plan. In the meantime, I can do a temporary fix on the brakes so you can drive safely. It won't cost you anything today." From inside the garage, Tony's voice boomed with characteristic impatience. "Marcus, stop giving away free work. If they can't afford it, they should take it somewhere else." Emma's eyes widened at the harsh words, and Maria's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression calm and reassuring. "Don't worry about that," he told them quietly. "We'll figure something out. Give me an hour to work on those brakes, and you'll be safe to drive home." As Marcus worked under the hood, Emma wheeled closer to watch. Her curiosity was evident as she observed his methodical approach, the way his hands moved with confident precision among the mechanical components. How do you know how to fix everything? She asked, genuine wonder in her voice. Marcus paused in his work, a small smile playing at his lips. I've always been good with figuring out how things work. Cars are like puzzles, and every problem has a solution if you look at it the right way. I wish I could drive a car, Emma said wistfully. All the kids at school talk about getting bikes and scooters, but I can't use those. Sometimes I dream about having my own car that I could drive all by myself. The innocence in her voice struck Marcus deeply. He found himself really looking at her for the first time, seeing past the wheelchair to the bright, curious child who simply wanted the same freedoms that other kids took for granted. Maybe someday you will have your own car, he said softly. Sometimes the best things come when we least expect them. Where in the world are you watching from right now? It's amazing how stories like this connect people across different time zones and continents. What time is it where you are as you listen to Emma's simple dream? Tony appeared beside the car, his expression skeptical as he watched Marcus make the final adjustments. You're spending too much time on this job, he grumbled. Time is money, and charity work doesn't pay the bills. Marcus straightened up, his tools in hand. The car is safe now, Mrs. Rodriguez. The brakes will hold until you can afford the full repair. Just be gentle with them and come back next week. As Maria and Emma prepared to leave, the young girl looked up at Marcus with eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for helping us, she said simply. You're really nice. Long after they had driven away, Marcus found himself thinking about Emma's words, about her quiet wish for independence and freedom. Something about her resilient spirit reminded him of his own daughter Lily, and an idea began to form in the back of his mind, growing stronger with each passing moment. That evening, Marcus sat at the small kitchen table in his modest apartment, a pencil moving across graph paper with practiced precision. The overhead light cast a warm glow over his work as he sketched mechanical drawings that looked far more sophisticated than anything a typical auto mechanic might produce. His lines were clean and exact, showing an understanding of engineering principles that went well beyond basic car repair. Lily appeared beside him, her school backpack still slung over one shoulder as she peered at his drawings. What are you working on, Dad? She asked, settling into the chair next to him. Marcus paused, his pencil hovering over the paper. Remember the little girl we talked about? The one who came to the shop today with her grandmother? The one in the wheelchair? Lily nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the same compassionate nature as her father. You said she seemed really nice. She is, Marcus agreed. And she mentioned something today that got me thinking. She said she wished she could drive a car like other kids. Most 7-year-olds don't even think about driving, but for her, it represents something she feels she might never have. Lily studied the sketches more closely, recognizing the familiar sight of her father's detailed technical drawings. These drawings reminded her of the ones he used to work on late at night when he thought she was sleeping, back when her mother was sick and he would design things to help make life easier around the house. Are you going to build her something? Lily asked, excitement creeping into her voice. Like you built that special step stool for me when I couldn't reach the bathroom sink? Marcus smiled at the memory. The step stool had been a simple project, but he had engineered it to be adjustable and safe, with features that most parents would never think to include. Maybe, he said thoughtfully. I'm just exploring some ideas right now. The pencil resumed its movement across the paper as Marcus sketched what appeared to be a small vehicle, clearly designed for a child but incorporating safety features and engineering solutions that showed remarkable sophistication. Battery placement, steering mechanisms, braking systems, each component was being carefully considered and planned. I remember when you used to draw pictures like this for your old job, Lily observed quietly. Before Mom got sick and you had to leave the fancy car company. Marcus's hand stilled for a moment. He rarely talked about his previous career, the years he had spent as a senior automotive engineer designing luxury vehicles for Sterling Motors. When Sarah's cancer diagnosis came, he had made the difficult decision to step away from the demanding corporate world to care for his family. The decision had been easy to make but difficult to live with financially. "That was a long time ago, sweetheart," he said gently. "Now I help people in a different way." "But you still remember how to design cars, right?" Lily pressed. "You still have all those books about engineering in your closet." Marcus glanced toward the bedroom where, hidden behind winter coats, sat boxes of technical manuals and design portfolios from his previous life. Yes, he still remembered. In fact, working on basic automotive repairs had only sharpened his appreciation for elegant engineering solutions. Over the weekend, Marcus found himself driving to the industrial district on the outskirts of town, where Danny's salvage yard sprawled across several acres of organized chaos. Danny Kovac had been supplying parts to local mechanics for over 20 years, and he had developed a respect for Marcus's ability to find creative uses for seemingly worthless components. "Looking for anything special today?" Danny called out as Marcus wandered through the rows of vehicles in various states of disassembly. "Small electric motors," Marcus replied, examining a golf cart that had seen better days. "Lightweight frame materials. Maybe some electronic components if you have any. Building something interesting?" Danny's curiosity was evident as he watched Marcus evaluate potential materials with an expert eye that seemed to see possibilities where others saw only scrap. "A project for a kid," Marcus said simply, but Danny caught the careful way he examined weight distributions and structural integrity, noting measurements with the precision of someone who understood engineering principles at a deep level. By Sunday afternoon, Marcus had acquired an impressive collection of components: a small but powerful electric motor from a mobility scooter, lightweight aluminum tubing from a damaged racing bike, electronic speed controllers from various sources, and even a small steering wheel from a children's Rideon toy that he planned to completely rebuild. Back in the small garage behind his apartment building, Marcus began the careful process of design and construction. The space was cramped, but he had set up a modest workshop with tools that reflected his professional background. His drill press, precision measuring instruments, and welding equipment were all maintained with meticulous care. The project demanded solutions to complex problems. How to create a vehicle that was safe enough for a child in a wheelchair to operate, powerful enough to provide real mobility, but simple enough for a 7-year-old to control. Each challenge required the kind of systematic thinking that had once earned him recognition in the automotive industry. As he worked, Marcus found himself remembering the satisfaction of creating something truly innovative, something that solved problems in elegant ways. For the first time in years, he was using his full skill set, applying knowledge that had been dormant but never forgotten. The following Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Tony's auto repair an hour earlier than usual, his truck loaded with carefully concealed components for Emma's car. He had wrapped the aluminum tubing in old blankets and placed the electric motor inside a standard toolbox, making everything appear like routine equipment rather than the sophisticated project it actually was. Tony was already in the office, hunched over invoices with his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He glanced up as Marcus began unloading his truck. "What's all that stuff?" he asked with mild suspicion. "Just some tools I brought from home," Marcus replied evenly. "Thought they might be useful for some of the more complex repairs." This triggered Tony's usual lecture about keeping costs down and not overcomplicating simple jobs. "We fix cars here, not build rockets," he grumbled. "Keep it simple, get them in and out, that's how we make money." Marcus nodded patiently, as he always did, while mentally calculating torque requirements and battery placement for Emma's vehicle. Tony's philosophy of minimal effort stood in stark contrast to Marcus's instinctive drive toward elegant solutions and quality craftsmanship. During his lunch break, Marcus retreated to the far corner of the garage where damaged vehicles awaited parts removal. Here, hidden behind a rusty pickup truck, he began the delicate process of fabricating the frame for Emma's car. The aluminum tubing required precise cuts and careful welding, work that demanded both skill and artistic vision. His hands moved with the confidence of someone who had once designed vehicles that sold for 6 figures. Each joint was perfectly aligned, each measurement exact. The frame that emerged was both lightweight and structurally sound, incorporating safety features that went far beyond what most people would consider necessary for a child's toy. Mike Petrosky, one of the other mechanics, wandered over during his break and found Marcus carefully adjusting the suspension geometry. "What the hell is that?" Mike asked, genuine amazement in his voice as he examined the sophisticated construction. "A project for a kid," Marcus replied, not looking up from his precise measurements. "Something to help her get around better." Mike had worked at the shop for 8 years and considered himself experienced with automotive fabrication, but what he was seeing exceeded anything he could have imagined creating. The attention to detail, the understanding of engineering principles, the quality of workmanship, all suggested expertise that went well beyond typical mechanic skills. "Where did you learn to build stuff like this?" Mike asked, running his finger along a perfectly welded joint. "This looks like something that should have blueprints and engineering stamps." Marcus paused in his work, considering how to respond. "YouTube videos," he said finally, which was technically true since he had watched several tutorials to refresh his memory on specific welding techniques, even though his fundamental knowledge came from years of professional training. The electronic components required even more sophisticated integration. Marcus spent his evening breaks installing the speed control system, carefully programming acceleration curves that would provide smooth, predictable performance for a young driver. The regenerative braking system he designed was more advanced than what most electric vehicles incorporated, providing both safety and extended battery life. By Wednesday, other mechanics had begun to notice the project. Carlos Mendez, who specialized in electrical systems, observed Marcus installing what appeared to be a custom dashboard with LED indicators and safety monitoring systems. "Marcus, man, that's some serious electronics work," Carlos commented, clearly impressed by the professional quality wiring and component layout. "Where did you get training for this kind of stuff?" "Just picked it up over the years," Marcus replied, focused on calibrating the speed sensors. His fingers worked with practiced efficiency, making connections that would have challenged many professional electronics technicians. Tony eventually discovered the project on Thursday afternoon, emerging from his office to find Marcus applying primer to what was clearly not a standard automotive repair. His face reddened with irritation as he approached the workstation. "What exactly is this, Chen?" Tony demanded, his voice carrying across the garage and causing the other mechanics to look up from their work. "This isn't a hobby shop, it's a business. I'm working on this during my breaks and lunch hours," Marcus replied calmly, not stopping his careful paint application. "It's not interfering with regular work." Tony examined the vehicle more closely, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion as he recognized the quality and sophistication of the construction. The workmanship was extraordinary, far exceeding anything he had seen in 25 years of automotive work. "This looks expensive," Tony said suspiciously. "Where did you get money for materials like this? And where did you learn to build something this complicated?" "Used parts from the salvage yard," Marcus answered truthfully. "As for the construction, I've always been good with my hands." What Tony didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that Marcus was applying knowledge gained from designing vehicles that cost more than most people's houses. Every design decision reflected years of professional experience, every component choice demonstrated understanding of engineering principles that came from formal education and real-world application at the highest levels of the automotive industry. The mini car was nearing completion, and Marcus knew that soon Emma would have the freedom she had dreamed of, even if no one at the shop understood the true significance of what they were witnessing. Friday morning brought an unexpected challenge when Mrs. Patterson arrived with her luxury sedan making an unusual vibration that had stumped 2 other repair shops. The Mercedes had an intermittent steering issue that occurred only at highway speeds, and the previous mechanics had replaced components without solving the underlying problem. Tony assigned the job to Marcus with his usual directive to keep it simple and profitable. "Just find something obvious to replace and charge her for it," he instructed. "Don't waste time chasing ghosts." Marcus lifted the vehicle and began his systematic diagnostic process, his approach methodical and thorough. Within minutes, he had identified the root cause, a harmonic resonance in the steering column that occurred when specific frequencies from the engine synchronized with the wheel rotation. It was the kind of complex engineering problem that required deep understanding of mechanical systems and vibration analysis. The solution involved modifying the steering damper mounting points and adjusting the harmonic frequency of the steering column itself. Marcus fabricated custom bushings using materials from his mini-car project, creating a fix that addressed the fundamental physics of the problem rather than simply replacing parts. Mike watched in fascination as Marcus machined precision components on the shop's aging lathe, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who had spent years working to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The modifications he was making required understanding of material properties and stress analysis that seemed far beyond typical automotive repair knowledge. "How do you know that's going to work?" Mike asked, observing Marcus's careful calculations on a piece of scrap paper covered with complex mathematical equations. "Physics," Marcus replied simply, though the equations he was using came from graduate-level mechanical engineering coursework he had completed 15 years earlier. "If you understand why something is happening, you can predict how to fix it." When Mrs. Patterson returned to test drive the vehicle, the improvement was immediate and dramatic. The steering was smoother than it had been in years, and the mysterious vibration had completely disappeared. She was so impressed that she insisted on paying double the estimated repair cost and asked for Marcus's business card to recommend him to her friends. Tony was pleased with the extra profit but suspicious of the sophisticated repair methods he had witnessed. "That was a lot of complicated work for a simple steering problem," he commented, watching Marcus clean up his workspace with characteristic precision. "Sometimes the right solution looks complicated but actually prevents bigger problems later," Marcus explained, carefully storing his precision tools. The quick fixes the other shops tried were just temporary patches. This philosophical difference had become a source of ongoing tension between them. Tony's focus on minimal effort and maximum profit clashed with Marcus's instinctive drive toward comprehensive solutions and quality workmanship. The mini-car project had only highlighted these differences more clearly. That afternoon, Marcus applied the final coat of bright blue paint to Emma's completed vehicle. The color was cheerful and vibrant, chosen specifically to appeal to a 7-year-old girl while remaining visible for safety purposes. As he worked, he mentally reviewed all the safety systems he had incorporated: automatic speed limiting, collision avoidance sensors, emergency stop functionality, and battery monitoring with automatic shutdown protection. Carlos approached the workstation and whistled appreciatively at the finished product. "Marcus, this thing is incredible," he said, running his hands over the smooth paint finish and examining the professional quality construction. "This isn't just a toy, this is like a real car scaled down for a kid." The attention to detail was extraordinary. The dashboard included functional gauges, LED status indicators, and even a small storage compartment designed specifically for items a child might want to carry. The steering wheel was wrapped in soft grip material, and the seat was custom padded for comfort during extended use. Most impressive were the safety features that weren't immediately visible. Marcus had programmed the electronic control system with multiple layers of protection. Speed would automatically reduce if the vehicle detected obstacles, the system would shut down if it sensed any mechanical problems, and parents could remotely control maximum speed through a simple smartphone app he had designed. "My daughter's going to flip when she sees this," Carlos continued, clearly moved by the thoughtfulness and craftsmanship. "What made you decide to build something this amazing for a kid you barely know?" Marcus paused in his work, considering the question. "Sometimes you meet someone who reminds you that there are people in the world who deserve better than what they've been given," he said quietly. Emma is one of those people. The emotional weight of the project had grown throughout the week. This wasn't just about building a vehicle for a disabled child, it was about Marcus using his considerable talents to create something that would provide genuine freedom and joy. For the first time in 3 years, he was applying the full scope of his engineering knowledge to solve a problem that mattered deeply to him. Tony appeared beside the workstation as Marcus made final adjustments to the suspension calibration. "I still don't understand why you're putting so much effort into this," he said, though his tone carried less irritation than usual. "The kid's not paying you anything, and you've probably spent more on materials than most people make in a week." "Because it's the right thing to do," Marcus replied, his voice carrying quiet conviction. And because I can. Saturday morning arrived with crisp autumn air and the kind of golden sunlight that made everything seem more hopeful. Marcus had arranged to meet Maria and Emma at the small park across from the repair shop, choosing a location with smooth pathways and open space where the mini car could be safely demonstrated. He arrived early, pulling his truck up to the park entrance and carefully unloading the completed vehicle from the covered truck bed. The bright blue paint gleamed in the morning light, and every detail reflected the hundreds of hours of meticulous work he had invested. As he positioned the car near the playground, several early joggers slowed their pace to stare at the remarkable creation. Emma's excited voice carried across the park as Maria's Honda pulled into the parking area. "Is that really for me?" she called out, her eyes wide with disbelief as she took in the sophisticated little vehicle that looked like something from a high-end toy store rather than a homemade project. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, his expression warm with anticipation. "This is yours, Emma. I thought you might like to have your own car to drive, just like you dreamed about." Maria covered her mouth with both hands, tears immediately springing to her eyes as she understood the magnitude of what Marcus had created. The vehicle was clearly worth thousands of dollars, incorporating features and craftsmanship that exceeded anything she could have imagined. "Marcus," she whispered, "this is too much. We could never afford to pay you for something like this." "You don't need to pay me anything," Marcus replied gently, already helping Emma transfer from her wheelchair to the custom-designed driver's seat. "This is a gift, from one parent to another. Emma deserves to have the same freedom that other kids take for granted." The transfer process revealed another layer of Marcus's thoughtful design. The seat was positioned at exactly the right height for easy wheelchair access, and the door opening was wider than standard to accommodate the transition. Emma settled into the padded seat with obvious delight, her small hands reaching for the steering wheel with reverent excitement. "Let me show you how everything works," Marcus said, pointing to the simple but functional dashboard. "This button starts the car, this one makes it go forward, and this pedal makes it stop. The car knows to go slowly until you get comfortable, and it will never go faster than your grandmother thinks is safe." Emma pressed the start button and gasped with joy as the LED indicators lit up and a gentle humming sound indicated the electric motor was ready. When she pressed the forward button, the car began moving with smooth, predictable acceleration that felt both exciting and completely safe. "I'm driving," she shouted, her voice filled with pure happiness as she guided the vehicle along the park's paved pathway. "Look, Grandma, I'm really driving my own car." Word of the demonstration spread quickly through the small community. Mrs. Henderson from the flower shop came over to investigate the commotion, followed by several families with children who had been playing at the nearby playground. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered to watch Emma navigate her new vehicle with growing confidence and skill. What struck everyone was not just the obvious quality of the construction, but the thoughtfulness of every design element. The car moved quietly enough not to disturb others, but fast enough to provide genuine excitement. The safety features were comprehensive but invisible, allowing Emma to feel independent while keeping her completely protected. A woman in an expensive business suit stood at the edge of the growing crowd, her attention focused intensely on the technical aspects of the vehicle rather than just the heartwarming scene. Victoria Sterling had been driving past on her way to a weekend meeting when she noticed the unusual gathering and decided to investigate. As a CEO in the automotive industry, Victoria immediately recognized that what she was witnessing represented extraordinary engineering capability. The vehicle's proportions, the quality of the paint finish, the sophisticated electronic integration, all indicated professional-level expertise that was extremely rare outside major automotive corporations. "Who built this?" she asked Mrs. Henderson quietly, not wanting to interrupt Emma's joyful exploration of her new freedom. "Marcus Chen, the mechanic from Tony's shop across the street, Mrs. Henderson replied. "He's been working on it for weeks, all in his spare time. Sweet man, raising his daughter all by himself since his wife passed." Victoria studied Marcus as he patiently answered Emma's questions about the car's features, noting the way he explained complex systems in terms a 7-year-old could understand while demonstrating deep knowledge of automotive engineering principles. His casual mention of torque curves and battery management systems suggested expertise that went far beyond typical mechanical repair. Emma completed several circuits around the park, her confidence growing with each pass. The car responded perfectly to her inputs, providing the kind of smooth, predictable performance that comes from sophisticated electronic control systems and careful calibration. What part of this incredible story touches your heart most deeply? Whether you're watching from New York or New Delhi, London or Los Angeles, there's something universal about seeing a child's dream come true through someone's selfless dedication. Share your thoughts about moments like these that restore faith in human kindness. As the demonstration continued, Victoria found herself increasingly impressed not just by the vehicle itself, but by Marcus's obvious understanding of the recipient's specific needs. This wasn't just a scaled-down car, it was a carefully engineered mobility solution designed specifically for a child in a wheelchair, incorporating features that showed deep empathy and professional-level problem-solving skills. The afternoon sun was beginning to cast longer shadows when Emma finally brought her car to a stop beside her grandmother, her face glowing with happiness and newfound confidence. "Thank you, Marcus," she said simply. "This is the best present anyone has ever given me." Marcus smiled, watching as Maria helped Emma back into her wheelchair while marveling at the sophisticated vehicle her granddaughter now owned. For him, seeing Emma's joy was worth every hour he had invested in the project. Victoria Sterling remained at the park long after the crowd had dispersed, her trained eye continuing to analyze the remarkable vehicle that Emma was now confidently maneuvering around the playground equipment. As CEO of Sterling Luxury Motors, she had overseen the development of some of the world's most advanced automotive technologies, and what she was witnessing defied easy explanation. The regenerative braking system alone represented engineering sophistication that most major manufacturers struggled to implement effectively. Yet here was a mechanic from a small-town repair shop who had somehow created a seamless integration of advanced systems in what appeared to be a weekend project for a disabled child. "Excuse me," Victoria approached Marcus as he was helping Emma practice parallel parking between two park benches. "I'm Victoria Sterling. I couldn't help but notice the exceptional quality of this vehicle. Did you really build this yourself?" Marcus looked up, noting the woman's expensive clothing and confident bearing. "Yes," he replied simply. "Emma needed something special, so I made it for her." The casual way he described creating what was clearly a masterpiece of engineering impressed Victoria even more than the technical achievement itself. In her experience, people with this level of capability typically understood its rarity and value. Marcus seemed genuinely unaware that what he had accomplished was extraordinary. "I work in the automotive industry," Victoria continued, kneeling to examine the custom suspension system more closely. "This level of engineering typically requires teams of specialists and million-dollar development budgets. Where did you learn to integrate these systems so effectively?" Marcus paused in his supervision of Emma's driving practice, considering how to respond. "I've always been interested in how things work," he said finally. "When you understand the principles, the applications become more obvious." This modest explanation only deepened Victoria's curiosity. The vehicle incorporated solutions to problems that had challenged her own engineering teams for years. The seamless integration of safety systems, the elegant battery management, the sophisticated control algorithms, all suggested formal training and extensive experience in automotive development. "What's your background?" Victoria asked directly, her business instincts telling her she was encountering someone whose talents were being dramatically underutilized. "I'm a mechanic at Tony's shop," Marcus replied, gesturing toward the repair facility across the street. "We fix cars and try to keep people safe on the road." The deflection was polite but incomplete, and Victoria's years of executive experience had taught her to recognize when someone was avoiding a direct question. She watched as Marcus made minor adjustments to the vehicle's electronic systems, his movements displaying the kind of intuitive understanding that came from deep expertise rather than casual interest. Emma drove up to them, her face radiant with excitement. "Marcus, can you teach my friend Sophie how to drive this? She's coming to visit next week, and she uses a wheelchair too." "Of course," Marcus smiled, his attention immediately focusing on Emma's request. We can adjust the settings so it's perfect for her as well. Victoria observed this interaction with growing fascination. Not only had Marcus created an extraordinary vehicle, but he had designed it with adaptability that would allow it to accommodate different users with different needs. This kind of forward-thinking design philosophy was exactly what her company struggled to achieve in their mainstream products. "Marcus, would you be willing to have coffee with me sometime this week?" Victoria asked, pulling a business card from her purse. "I'd like to discuss your work in more detail." Marcus glanced at the elegant card, noting the Sterling Luxury Motors logo and Victoria's title as Chief Executive Officer. The connection between the woman asking questions and one of the world's most prestigious automotive companies was unexpected and slightly intimidating. "I appreciate the interest," he said carefully, "but I'm pretty busy with regular work and taking care of my daughter. I don't think I'd have much to contribute to a company like yours." Victoria smiled at his humility, recognizing it as genuine rather than false modesty. "Actually, I think you might have more to contribute than you realize. The engineering solutions you've implemented here represent exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need in our industry." As Emma continued her driving practice, Victoria found herself mentally cataloging the advanced features she was observing. The vehicle's stability control system prevented tipping even during sharp turns, the speed automatically adjusted based on terrain conditions, and the battery management included predictive charging algorithms that optimized performance based on usage patterns. These weren't features that someone could simply research and implement without deep understanding of automotive engineering principles. Victoria had worked with hundreds of engineers over her career, and very few possessed the combination of theoretical knowledge and practical implementation skills that Marcus was demonstrating. Tony Marcelli emerged from his shop and walked across the street, his expression suspicious as he approached the group. "Marcus, what's all this attention about?" he called out, clearly uncomfortable with the crowd that had gathered earlier and the ongoing scrutiny of his employee's project. "Just showing Emma how to use her new car," Marcus replied evenly, though Victoria noticed the subtle tension that entered his posture when his boss appeared. Tony examined Victoria's expensive clothing and confident demeanor with obvious wariness. "And who might you be?" he asked bluntly. "Victoria Sterling, from Sterling Luxury Motors," she replied, extending her hand professionally. "I was admiring the exceptional craftsmanship of this vehicle." Tony's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion as he processed the implications of a luxury car company CEO taking interest in his mechanic's hobby project. "Sterling Motors?" he repeated, clearly recognizing the prestigious brand name. "What would a company like that want with a little kid's toy?" "This isn't a toy," Victoria replied firmly, her tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to correcting misconceptions. "This represents some of the most sophisticated automotive engineering I've seen outside major development laboratories." The comment left Tony speechless, his understanding of Marcus's capabilities suddenly shifting as he began to grasp that what he had dismissed as an expensive waste of time might actually represent something far more significant than he had realized. Monday morning brought an unusual atmosphere to Tony's auto repair as Victoria Sterling's business card sat prominently on Tony's cluttered desk. He had spent the weekend researching Sterling Luxury Motors online, discovering that the woman who had complimented his mechanic's work was worth over $200 million and led one of the most innovative companies in the automotive industry. Marcus arrived for work to find Tony waiting by his workstation, an expression of barely contained curiosity on his weathered face. "We need to talk," Tony announced, gesturing toward the small office in the back corner of the garage. Inside the cramped space filled with invoices and automotive supply catalogs, Tony closed the door and turned to face Marcus with an intensity that was unusual even for him. "That woman yesterday, Victoria Sterling, she left her card and asked me to have you call her. Do you have any idea why the CEO of Sterling Motors would be interested in talking to you?" Marcus shrugged, genuinely uncertain about Victoria's motivations. "She seemed impressed with Emma's car, but I'm not sure what that has to do with her business." Tony leaned forward across his desk, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Marcus, Sterling Motors builds cars that cost more than most people's houses. Their engineers have advanced degrees from places like MIT and Stanford. Why would someone like that be interested in a mechanic's hobby project? The question hung in the air between them, and Marcus felt the familiar weight of his hidden past pressing against his carefully maintained facade. Maybe she was just being polite, he suggested, though he knew from Victoria's technical questions that her interest went deeper than casual courtesy. Throughout the morning, Marcus found himself distracted by thoughts of Victoria's business card and the implications of her unexpected attention. He had worked hard to build a quiet, stable life for himself and Lily, avoiding the high-pressure world he had once inhabited. The idea of returning to that environment, even peripherally, stirred both excitement and anxiety. During his lunch break, Marcus finally called the number on Victoria's card. Her assistant put him through immediately, suggesting that Victoria had been expecting his call. "Marcus, thank you for calling." Victoria's voice was warm but professional. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I'd like to propose something. Would you be willing to take a look at a technical challenge we're facing? Just as a consultant, nothing formal." The request was both flattering and concerning. Marcus understood that accepting would mean exposing more of his capabilities, potentially opening doors he had deliberately closed years earlier. "What kind of challenge?" he asked carefully. "We're developing an adaptive vehicle system for disabled drivers," Victoria explained. "The project has been stalled for months because our engineering teams can't solve the integration problems between the mobility assistance features and the safety systems. After seeing what you accomplished with Emma's car, I think you might have insights we're missing." The irony was striking. Marcus had once worked on similar projects during his time at Sterling Motors, back when he was part of the advanced development team under a different management structure. Victoria wouldn't know about his previous employment, since he had left before her promotion to CEO and had never worked directly with her. "I'd be happy to take a look," Marcus found himself saying, despite his reservations. "When would you need this? Are you available this afternoon?" Victoria asked. "I can send a car to pick you up at your shop around 3 o'clock. Tony's reaction to Marcus leaving early for a consultation with Sterling Motors was a mixture of pride and bewilderment. "Go make us look good," he said, though his expression suggested he still couldn't quite believe one of his mechanics had been personally requested by a luxury automotive CEO. The Sterling Motors headquarters was a gleaming glass and steel complex that represented everything Marcus had walked away from 3 years earlier. As he entered the building, memories of corporate meetings and design reviews came flooding back, along with the stress and demands that had ultimately forced him to choose between his career and his family. Victoria met him in the lobby personally, a gesture that surprised the reception staff and emphasized the importance she placed on this consultation. She led him through corridors lined with awards and photographs of vehicles he had helped design, though she didn't know about his connection to the company's history. In the engineering laboratory, Marcus was introduced to a team of 6 specialists who had been working on the adaptive vehicle project for 8 months without finding a satisfactory solution. The problem was complex: how to integrate wheelchair accessibility features with advanced safety systems while maintaining the luxury and performance standards that Sterling customers expected. Marcus studied their technical documentation for 20 minutes, noting several fundamental approach errors that were preventing progress. The team had been trying to add accessibility features to existing vehicle architectures instead of designing the integration from the ground up. "I think I see the issue," Marcus said finally, approaching the whiteboard where the team had mapped their current design attempts. "You're treating the mobility assistance as an add-on feature instead of designing it as a core system component." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined an alternative approach that addressed the integration challenges through elegant engineering solutions rather than complex workarounds. His explanations demonstrated deep understanding of automotive systems integration, manufacturing constraints, and regulatory requirements that impressed even the senior engineers in the room. "Where did you develop this expertise?" asked Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the project's lead engineer. This level of systems thinking typically requires years of experience in automotive development. Marcus paused, aware that he was approaching the moment when his careful privacy might need to give way to professional honesty. "I've studied automotive engineering for a long time," he said finally. "Sometimes practical experience teaches you things that textbooks can't." Victoria watched this exchange with growing conviction that her instincts about Marcus were correct. His solutions were not only technically sound but showed the kind of innovative thinking that her company desperately needed to maintain its competitive edge in an evolving industry. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected visitor to Tony's auto repair in the form of Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who arrived in a pristine Sterling Motors Company vehicle looking distinctly out of place among the oil stains and worn equipment. She had spent the previous evening researching Marcus Chen and had discovered something that sent shockwaves through her understanding of the previous day's consultation. Tony emerged from his office, wiping his hands on a greasy rag as he approached the well-dressed woman examining his modest facility with obvious curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone carrying the wariness he reserved for customers who looked like they might complain about his prices. "I'm Dr. Walsh from Sterling Motors," she replied, showing her company identification. "I'm looking for Marcus Chen. We worked together yesterday, and I have some follow-up questions about his consulting recommendations." Marcus looked up from the transmission he was rebuilding, his expression carefully neutral despite the surprise he felt at seeing Dr. Walsh in his workplace. He had hoped that his consultation would remain discreet, but apparently Sterling Motors was taking his input more seriously than he had anticipated. "Marcus," Dr. Walsh approached his workstation with obvious purpose. "I spent some time last night researching the technical solutions you proposed yesterday, and I found something interesting. Your approach to systems integration matches very closely with methodologies developed by our advanced engineering team about 4 years ago." The statement hung in the air with implications that made Marcus uncomfortable. He continued working on the transmission while considering how to respond, aware that Tony and several other mechanics were listening to the conversation with growing curiosity. "There are only so many ways to solve complex integration problems," Marcus replied carefully. "Good engineering principles tend to converge on similar solutions regardless of who's applying them." Dr. Walsh pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus a technical diagram he recognized immediately, though he kept his expression neutral. "This is from a project led by our former senior design engineer, Marcus Chen. The methodology you described yesterday is nearly identical to his work on our adaptive vehicle platform from 2021. Tony's expression shifted from confusion to shock as he processed the implications of what he was hearing. "Marcus Chen," he repeated slowly. "Are you telling me that my mechanic has the same name as one of your former engineers?" "Not just the same name," Dr. Walsh continued, her attention focused entirely on Marcus. "According to our personnel records, Marcus Chen was one of our most innovative engineers. He left the company 3 years ago for personal reasons, and his departure was considered a significant loss to our development capabilities." The garage fell silent except for the distant hum of the air compressor. Mike and Carlos had stopped their work entirely, staring at Marcus with expressions of complete bewilderment. The man they had worked beside for 3 years, who had always been helpful but never boastful, was apparently a former executive from one of the world's most prestigious automotive companies. Marcus set down his tools and straightened up, realizing that his carefully maintained privacy was about to end whether he wanted it to or not. "Yes," he said quietly. "I worked at Sterling Motors until 2022. Tony's face went through a series of expressions as he processed this revelation. "You're telling me that for 3 years, I've had a Sterling Motors engineer working as a mechanic in my shop?" he asked, his voice rising with each word. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it didn't matter," Marcus replied, though even as he said it, he knew the explanation was insufficient. "I needed work that let me be home for my daughter, and you needed a reliable mechanic. The job got done either way." Dr. Walsh was clearly fascinated by this development, but also confused about the circumstances that had led a senior automotive engineer to accept employment at a small-town repair shop. "Marcus, your personnel file indicates you left for family reasons. Would you be willing to discuss what happened?" Marcus hesitated, aware that explaining his situation would require revealing personal details he had kept private for years. "My wife was diagnosed with cancer," he said finally. "I needed to be available for her care and to take care of our daughter. Corporate engineering doesn't offer that kind of flexibility." The simple statement carried enormous emotional weight, and Dr. Walsh's expression softened with understanding. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said gently. "The records show you were working on some groundbreaking projects when you left." Tony was still struggling to process the revelation that his most reliable mechanic was actually a former automotive executive. "This explains so much," he muttered, thinking about the sophisticated repairs Marcus had performed and the advanced problem-solving approaches he had witnessed over the years. "Marcus," Dr. Walsh continued, "Victoria asked me to extend a formal offer. She'd like you to consider returning to Sterling Motors as a senior consulting engineer. The position would offer flexible hours and remote work options that would allow you to maintain your family priorities." The offer was everything Marcus might have hoped for professionally, but it also represented a return to the high-pressure world he had deliberately left behind. He looked around the garage at his co-workers, who were still staring at him with expressions of amazement and confusion. Mike finally broke the silence. "Dude, you've been fixing my transmission problems when you could have been designing million-dollar cars? Why would you do that?" "Because fixing your transmission helped your family get to work safely," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the most important engineering happens in places like this, not in corporate boardrooms." The comment revealed the fundamental difference in values that had led Marcus to choose family over career advancement, but it also demonstrated the quiet integrity that had made him respected among his co-workers despite their lack of understanding about his background. Dr. Walsh made notes on her tablet, clearly planning to report this conversation to Victoria. "Marcus, I understand this is a big decision, but I hope you'll consider the offer seriously. The industry needs people with your combination of technical expertise and real-world perspective." As Dr. Walsh prepared to leave, Tony approached Marcus with an expression that mixed respect with bewilderment. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I feel like I've been employing someone way above my pay grade without knowing it." "You've been employing someone who needed steady work and flexible hours," Marcus corrected gently. "The rest is just background." The following day brought an unexpected test when Victoria Sterling arrived at Tony's auto repair in a prototype vehicle that had been causing problems for her engineering teams for weeks. The sleek electric sedan represented millions of dollars in development costs, but a critical flaw in the regenerative braking system had prevented it from moving beyond the testing phase. Marcus was under the hood of a Ford pickup when Victoria's distinctive voice carried across the garage. "I'm hoping you might take a look at this," she called out, gesturing toward the prototype. "Our best engineers have been stumped for 3 weeks." Tony appeared immediately, his demeanor noticeably different since learning about Marcus's background. He now treated every interaction with Sterling Motors as a potential business opportunity, though his understanding of the technical complexities remained limited. Marcus wiped his hands and approached the prototype with professional curiosity. The vehicle represented cutting-edge automotive technology, incorporating systems he had helped develop during his previous tenure at Sterling Motors. As he lifted the hood, he immediately recognized several design elements from projects he had worked on years earlier. "What's the specific problem?" Marcus asked, connecting a diagnostic computer to the vehicle's main control module. "The regenerative braking system works perfectly in laboratory conditions," Victoria explained, "but fails unpredictably during real-world driving. We've replaced sensors, recalibrated software, and rebuilt the entire braking assembly twice, but the problem persists." Marcus studied the diagnostic readouts, his trained eye immediately spotting patterns that the Sterling engineering teams had apparently missed. The issue wasn't with any individual component, but with the interaction between the regenerative system and the vehicle's stability control algorithms during specific driving conditions. Mike and Carlos gathered around the prototype, fascinated by the advanced technology but also amazed to watch Marcus analyze systems that were far beyond their usual repair experience. They had worked beside him for years without realizing they were witnessing expertise that few people in the world possessed. "I think I see the issue," Marcus said after 20 minutes of analysis. "The regenerative braking system is conflicting with the stability control during certain combinations of speed, road conditions, and steering input. The two systems are trying to optimize for different priorities simultaneously. Victoria watched intently as Marcus explained the problem using technical language that demonstrated deep understanding of automotive control systems. His analysis was more comprehensive than anything her engineering teams had produced, despite their months of investigation. "Can you fix it?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Marcus opened his toolbox and retrieved a laptop computer that looked surprisingly sophisticated for a small-town mechanic's equipment. The software he launched was clearly professional-grade automotive engineering tools, not the basic diagnostic programs that most repair shops used. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus methodically reprogrammed the vehicle's control algorithms, creating new integration protocols that allowed the regenerative braking and stability control systems to coordinate effectively. His work demonstrated mastery of automotive software development that exceeded what most engineering teams could accomplish. Tony watched the entire process with growing amazement, finally understanding that the quiet mechanic he had employed was actually more qualified than the engineers at some of the world's most prestigious automotive companies. The revelation was both impressive and slightly intimidating. "Test drive time," Marcus announced, closing the hood and handing Victoria the keys. The systems should now work together instead of fighting each other. Victoria drove the prototype around the block several times, testing the braking system under various conditions that had previously caused failures. The improvement was immediate and dramatic. The regenerative braking now functioned smoothly in all driving situations, providing both energy recovery and seamless integration with the vehicle's safety systems. When she returned to the shop, Victoria's expression was one of professional admiration mixed with genuine amazement. "Marcus, that was extraordinary. You've solved in 2 hours what our entire engineering department couldn't resolve in 3 weeks." The other mechanics gathered around as Victoria described the successful test drive, their respect for Marcus reaching new levels as they realized the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. He hadn't just fixed a car, he had solved complex engineering problems that had defeated teams of specialists. "Marcus," Victoria continued, "I need to ask you directly. Will you consider returning to Sterling Motors? Not just as a consultant, but as our new Director of Advanced Engineering. The position comes with complete schedule flexibility and the resources to work on projects that could revolutionize automotive accessibility." The offer was extraordinary, representing not just a return to his former career level but a significant promotion that would put him in charge of exactly the kind of innovative projects he was most passionate about. The salary alone would be life-changing for him and Lily. Tony stepped forward, his expression serious. "Marcus, I can't compete with an offer like that, and I wouldn't try to. You've got talents that are wasted in a place like this. If you want to go, you have my blessing." The generosity of Tony's statement surprised everyone, including Marcus. Despite his sometimes gruff exterior, Tony recognized that holding Marcus back would be unfair to everyone involved. But Marcus's response wasn't immediate. He looked around the garage at the modest facility where he had found stability and peace during the most difficult period of his life. These people had given him employment when he needed it most, without questions about his background or demands for explanations about his circumstances. "I appreciate the offer, Victoria," Marcus said carefully. "But I need to discuss this with my daughter before making any major changes. She's been through enough disruption in her life already." Victoria nodded with understanding, recognizing that Marcus's family priorities were exactly the kind of values that would make him an exceptional leader. "Take all the time you need," she replied. "The offer will remain open as long as necessary." As Victoria prepared to leave, the prototype performing flawlessly after Marcus's modifications, she turned back to address the entire shop. "You should all know that you've been working alongside one of the most talented automotive engineers in the industry. Marcus's contributions today will benefit millions of drivers around the world." The comment left Tony and the other mechanics with a new appreciation for their colleague, and a growing understanding that Marcus's quiet competence had always reflected extraordinary capabilities that he had simply chosen not to advertise. That evening, Marcus sat across from Lily at their small kitchen table, the Sterling Motors offer letter spread between them alongside her homework assignments. The contrast between her elementary school math problems and the corporate documents offering him a six-figure salary with executive responsibilities was both striking and symbolic of the choices he faced. Lily studied the official letterhead with serious concentration, her 9-year-old mind processing the magnitude of what was being offered to her father. "This means we could move to a bigger house, doesn't it?" she asked, her voice thoughtful rather than excited. Marcus nodded, touched by her practical understanding of their circumstances. "It means a lot of things could change, sweetheart. Better schools, a house with a yard, college savings account, all the things I've wanted to provide for you but couldn't afford. But it also means you'd be working at the fancy car company again, like before Mom got sick," Lily continued, her insight surprising him with its depth. "Would you have to travel and work late nights like you used to?" The question struck at the heart of Marcus's internal conflict. The Sterling Motors position offered everything he had sacrificed when Sarah became ill: professional recognition, financial security, the opportunity to work on cutting-edge projects that could impact millions of lives. But it also represented a return to the demanding corporate environment that had once consumed so much of his time and energy. "Victoria has promised that family time would be protected," Marcus explained carefully. "The position includes flexible hours and remote work options that weren't available before. It would be different from my old job." Lily set down her pencil and looked directly at her father with the kind of serious expression that reminded him how much she had matured since losing her mother. "Dad, you've been taking care of everyone else since Mom died. Maybe it's time for someone to take care of you." Her words carried wisdom that seemed far beyond her years, and Marcus realized that his daughter had been observing his sacrifices more closely than he had understood. The years of choosing financial stability over professional fulfillment, of accepting work beneath his qualifications to ensure he could be available for her needs, had not gone unnoticed. The next morning brought a surprise visit from Emma and Maria, who arrived at the repair shop with a beautifully decorated card that Emma had made herself. The artwork showed stick figures representing Marcus, Emma, and her new car, with hearts and rainbows filling the background. "Marcus," Emma called out as she wheeled into the garage, "we wanted to thank you again for my car. I've been driving it every day, and all my friends think it's the coolest thing they've ever seen." Maria approached with obvious emotion in her eyes. "Marcus, I don't know how to express what your gift has meant to our family. Emma's confidence has grown so much since she got her car. She talks about wanting to be an engineer someday so she can help other kids like you helped her." The comment about Emma's career aspirations struck Marcus profoundly. His act of kindness had not only provided immediate joy but had potentially influenced a young girl's entire future direction. The ripple effects of using his talents to help others were extending far beyond what he had imagined. Tony emerged from his office, his demeanor toward Marcus noticeably different since learning about his background. He had spent considerable time thinking about the revelation and had reached some important conclusions about his employee's future. "Marcus," Tony said, his voice carrying uncharacteristic seriousness, "I've been thinking about this Sterling Motors offer, and I need to say something. You've got talents that could change the world, and keeping you here would be selfish on my part." The statement surprised Marcus, who had expected Tony to try to convince him to stay, especially given the potential loss of his most skilled mechanic. "But I also want you to know," Tony continued, "that if you ever want to come back, there will always be a place for you here. Sometimes a man needs to know he has a home base, especially when he's taking risks with his career." The generous offer provided Marcus with the security of knowing he could return to stable employment if the corporate environment proved incompatible with his family priorities. It was exactly the kind of safety net he needed to feel comfortable taking the leap back into executive-level responsibility. Victoria called that afternoon with additional details about the position that addressed many of Marcus's concerns. The role would involve leading a new division focused specifically on adaptive vehicle technologies, work that would directly impact people like Emma who needed transportation solutions that went beyond traditional automotive design. "Marcus," Victoria explained, "we want to create a legacy program called the Emma Initiative, developing affordable adaptive vehicles for children and adults with mobility challenges. Your work with Emma's car would become the foundation for products that could help thousands of families. The proposal transformed the position from simply a career opportunity into a mission that aligned perfectly with Marcus's values. Instead of returning to luxury vehicle development for wealthy customers, he would be using his expertise to solve problems for people who genuinely needed innovative solutions. As Marcus discussed the details with Victoria, he realized that accepting the position would allow him to scale up the kind of work he had done for Emma, creating systematic solutions instead of one-off projects. The resources of a major corporation could amplify his impact in ways that working alone never could. What moved you about this conversation between Marcus and his daughter? Whether you're listening from Tokyo or Toronto, Mumbai or Madrid, there's something universal about the balance between providing for our families and following our calling. If this story resonates with you, let us know where you're tuning in from tonight. That evening, Marcus made his decision. The combination of Lily's wisdom, Emma's inspiration, Tony's generosity, and Victoria's vision for meaningful work had created an opportunity that honored both his professional capabilities and his personal values. He called Victoria to accept the position, with the understanding that his work would focus on projects that made transportation accessible and affordable for people who had been overlooked by traditional automotive design. The decision felt like a homecoming to his true purpose rather than a simple career move. The news spread quickly through the small community, with people expressing both excitement for Marcus's opportunity and gratitude for the positive impact he had already made through his quiet acts of service and exceptional skill. Marcus's first day as Director of Advanced Engineering at Sterling Motors began with a tour of facilities he hadn't seen in 3 years, accompanied by Victoria and a team of engineers who would now report to him. The Advanced Development Laboratory had expanded significantly since his departure, incorporating new testing equipment and design technologies that represented the cutting edge of automotive innovation. The team assembled in the main conference room included Dr. Jennifer Walsh and 5 other senior engineers, all of whom had heard about Marcus's consultation work but were curious about his qualifications to lead their department. Academic credentials and corporate experience typically determined leadership positions, and Marcus's background as a small-town mechanic seemed inconsistent with executive responsibility. Dr. Walsh began the introductory presentations with obvious skepticism in her voice. Marcus, we've prepared an overview of our current projects and the challenges we've been facing. Most of these initiatives require coordination between multiple engineering disciplines and significant budget management experience. Marcus listened attentively to each presentation, noting that many of the problems the team described were exactly the kinds of integration challenges he had been solving informally for years. The difference was that corporate bureaucracy and departmental silos had prevented the kind of collaborative problem-solving that came naturally in smaller environments. When the presentations concluded, Marcus stood and approached the whiteboard where the team had outlined their most persistent technical challenges. Instead of delivering a traditional management speech about goals and expectations, he began working through specific engineering solutions in real time. The hybrid battery integration problem you mentioned, Marcus said, sketching system diagrams with practiced precision. The issue isn't with the battery technology itself, but with the thermal management protocols during rapid charging cycles. If we modify the cooling system architecture here and adjust the charge rate algorithms, we can eliminate the overheating issues entirely. Dr. Walsh watched with growing amazement as Marcus detailed solutions that her team had been struggling with for months. His approach combined theoretical knowledge with practical implementation experience, suggesting modifications that were both technically sound and economically feasible. James Morrison, the senior electrical engineer, had been particularly skeptical about Marcus's qualifications, but found himself impressed by the depth of knowledge being demonstrated. "How do you know that thermal management approach will work?" he asked, genuinely curious about Marcus's confidence in the solution. "Because I've seen similar problems in real-world applications," Marcus replied. "When you're fixing cars that have been driven hard for years, you learn how systems actually behave under stress, not just how they're supposed to behave according to specifications." This perspective represented exactly what the team had been missing. Their engineering solutions were technically perfect in laboratory conditions but sometimes failed when exposed to the unpredictable variables of real-world use. Marcus's experience bridging the gap between design theory and practical application was precisely what their projects needed. Over the following hours, Marcus systematically addressed each of the team's technical challenges, providing solutions that demonstrated both innovative thinking and practical feasibility. His leadership style was collaborative rather than authoritative, drawing out ideas from team members while guiding discussions toward productive conclusions. The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Emma and Maria, who had come to see Marcus's new workplace. Victoria had arranged for them to tour the facilities and witness the launch of the Emma Initiative, the adaptive vehicle program that would bear Emma's name and carry forward the mission that had started with her mini car. Emma's eyes widened with wonder as she saw the sophisticated laboratory equipment and prototype vehicles that represented the future of automotive technology. "This is where you're going to build cars for kids like me?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement and anticipation. "Not just kids," Marcus replied, kneeling beside her wheelchair in the middle of the advanced engineering laboratory. "We're going to build vehicles for anyone who needs transportation solutions that work differently from traditional cars. Your car was just the beginning." The engineering team watched this interaction with growing understanding of what Marcus had accomplished outside their corporate environment. Emma's obvious affection for Marcus and her genuine enthusiasm for the adaptive vehicle mission provided context for his unconventional background and unique qualifications. Dr. Walsh approached Marcus privately as the tour continued. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I questioned your qualifications based on assumptions about what leadership experience should look like. After seeing your technical capabilities and understanding your motivation, I realized that our department needed exactly the kind of perspective you bring." Marcus appreciated her honesty and professional maturity. "Corporate engineering can become disconnected from the people who actually use the vehicles we design," he replied. "Emma reminds us that our work has real impact on real lives, not just profit margins and performance specifications." The day concluded with Marcus's first team meeting as department director, where he outlined his vision for the Emma Initiative and the broader mission of adaptive vehicle development. Instead of focusing on luxury features for wealthy customers, their work would prioritize affordability and accessibility for people who had been underserved by traditional automotive design. The team's enthusiasm was evident as Marcus described specific projects they would undertake: affordable mobility solutions for seniors, adaptive vehicles for wounded veterans, transportation options for people with various physical challenges. Each project would combine cutting-edge technology with practical design philosophy and economic feasibility. Victoria observed the meeting from the back of the room, satisfied that her instincts about Marcus had been correct. His combination of technical expertise, real-world experience, and genuine empathy for end users was exactly what Sterling Motors needed to differentiate itself in an increasingly competitive market. As Marcus drove home that evening in the company vehicle Victoria had provided, he reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought him from hiding his talents in a small repair shop to leading advanced engineering projects that could impact thousands of lives. The decision to help Emma had opened doors he never could have anticipated, transforming both his professional prospects and his sense of purpose. Lily was waiting for him at their apartment, eager to hear about his first day in the new position. Her pride in her father's achievements was evident, but what moved Marcus most was her understanding that his work would help other families facing challenges similar to what they had experienced themselves. 6 months later, the Sterling Motors Advanced Engineering Laboratory buzzed with activity as the first production models of the Emma Initiative vehicles rolled off a specialized assembly line. The affordable adaptive cars represented everything Marcus had envisioned when he first built Emma's mini car: sophisticated engineering made accessible to families who needed innovative transportation solutions. Emma sat in the driver's seat of the latest prototype, her hands confidently gripping the steering wheel as she demonstrated the vehicle's capabilities to a group of visiting journalists and disability advocates. At 7 years old, she had become an unofficial spokesperson for adaptive transportation, her articulate explanations of the car's features impressing adults who had initially expected to speak with her grandmother. "This car is like my first one that Marcus built for me, but bigger and with even more cool features," Emma explained to the assembled crowd. "It has sensors that help me park, and the seat moves up and down so kids different sizes can drive it safely." Marcus watched from the observation deck above the demonstration area, his heart full of pride as he saw the ripple effects of that first act of kindness continuing to expand. The Emma initiative had exceeded all projections, with pre-orders coming in from families across the country who had been waiting years for affordable adaptive vehicles. Victoria joined him at the railing, her expression reflecting the satisfaction of a CEO whose gamble on unconventional talent had produced extraordinary results. The board approved funding for Phase 2 of the Emma initiative yesterday, she announced. We're going to expand production and develop adaptive vehicles for adults as well. The success had transformed Sterling Motors' reputation in ways that traditional luxury vehicle sales never could have achieved. News coverage of the Emma initiative had generated positive publicity worth millions of dollars, while positioning the company as an industry leader in socially responsible innovation. Below them, Tony Marcelli stood among the crowd of observers, his weathered face showing obvious pride as he watched his former mechanic address questions from automotive journalists with the confidence of someone who thoroughly understood both the technical complexities and human impact of his work. Tony had driven up from the repair shop specifically to witness this demonstration, bringing with him Mike and Carlos, who were equally amazed to see their former colleague in his new role. The transformation was remarkable, but what impressed them most was that Marcus remained fundamentally the same person who had quietly helped customers and solved problems without seeking recognition. Dr. Walsh approached Marcus during a break in the demonstrations, carrying a tablet displaying production statistics and customer feedback data. "Marcus, the response has been incredible," she reported. "We have orders from families in 43 states, and the customer satisfaction scores are the highest in company history." The numbers represented more than business success, they reflected lives being changed by transportation solutions that provided independence and dignity to people who had been underserved by traditional automotive design. Each sale meant a family gaining mobility options they had never thought possible. Marcus's own life had been transformed as well. The new salary had allowed him and Lily to move into a house with a yard, in a neighborhood with excellent schools and safe streets for bike riding. More importantly, his work schedule provided the flexibility he needed to attend Lily's school events and maintain the close relationship that had sustained them both through difficult years. Emma finished her demonstration and wheeled over to where Marcus was standing, her face glowing with excitement about her role in the day's presentations. "Marcus," she said, reaching up to take his hand, "when I grow up, I want to be an engineer just like you so I can help other kids who need special cars." The statement encapsulated everything Marcus had hoped to achieve through his work. By using his talents to help one child, he had not only provided immediate benefit but had potentially inspired the next generation of engineers who would continue advancing adaptive transportation technology. As the formal presentations concluded, Marcus found himself surrounded by colleagues, customers, and community members who had come to celebrate the Emma initiative's success. The recognition was gratifying, but what moved him most was seeing how his decision to apply his full capabilities to meaningful work had created opportunities for others to flourish as well. Victoria addressed the assembled crowd, her remarks focusing on the importance of corporate responsibility and the value of hiring people based on character and capability rather than conventional credentials. Marcus Chan exemplifies what happens when we recognize talent wherever it exists and provide opportunities for that talent to be applied to worthy purposes, she said. The comment highlighted the broader lesson of Marcus's story, that extraordinary capabilities often exist in unexpected places, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge and make a difference. His journey from hidden potential to recognized leadership demonstrated the importance of both individual initiative and institutional support for meaningful innovation. If this story of hidden potential and second chances has touched your heart tonight, we'd love to hear from you. Whether you're listening from London or Lagos, Seattle or Singapore, drop a comment about where you're tuning in from and subscribe for more inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful reminders that heroes walk among us every day. As the celebration continued into the evening, Marcus stepped outside onto the corporate campus grounds, where he could see the lights of the city spreading out below. The view represented everything he had worked toward, a position that utilized his full capabilities, financial security for his family, and the opportunity to create products that made a genuine difference in people's lives. Lily appeared beside him, having spent the afternoon exploring the Sterling Motors facilities and meeting the engineering team that now worked under her father's direction. "Dad," she said, taking his hand as they looked out over the city lights. "I'm proud of you for helping Emma and all the other kids who will get cars like hers." Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand, grateful for the wisdom and support she had provided throughout his journey from hidden potential to recognized achievement. The path had not been easy, but it had led to exactly where he was meant to be, using his gifts to serve others while building the kind of life he had always wanted to provide for his family. The Emma initiative would continue growing, touching more lives and creating more opportunities for people who needed adaptive transportation solutions. But for Marcus, the greatest success had already been achieved in that moment when a 7-year-old girl first drove her custom car around a small park, her face shining with the pure joy of newfound freedom.